Hello, everybody. It's Ndeye speaking. Welcome to my show today. I'm welcoming Katawa. She's a poet and she's an author. She's also an editor. And she's joining us for the first time live on our show. And I hope you'll join me and welcome her on this show. So welcome, Katawa.
Thank you.
Tell us about
Yeah, so I'm a Rochester, New York native. I am also the creator of Editor Knows Best, which is a podcast for writers and authors. I'm the CEO of Love for Words, which is an editing boutique, and I'm also a published author myself. And I just enjoy helping other authors and writers, get ready to publish their books and share their knowledge and their stories with the world.
Could you tell us more about the book, your poetry you published this year that brings us today to this show?
Yes, Dear August, Love August is my first book of poetry. I published that in March of this year. So it
Do you have
includes
one with
different,
you to show us? Your
I'm
book?
sorry.
Could you
Yes.
show us your book? Oh, okay. Thank you. So the audience could see also. So
Yes.
tell us more
So I
about the
published
book.
that.
Mhm.
Yes, published it in March. It includes some poems in here, also some monologues and some quotes that are near and dear to my heart. So I talk about different issues or different things that I've experienced or witnessed in my life. So I have a poem that's dedicated to dark-skinned girls and women. I have a poem dedicated to Black men. I have poems talking about being privileged. So there's a lot of different topics there in my poetry in the book. So it's just a wide array of different
And you
experiences
told
and
me also you are also lyricist.
yes, I do write lyrics. Um, I don't have music to my poems as of yet, but I have written a few songs that are included in the book.
Okay. Could you tell us, or maybe read us one or two of your poetry before we start the questions?
Sure. Let's see.
And if you could switch a little bit your camera, it's too sideways right now. Yeah, perfect.
Okay. So this poem that I read is it's called "The Knocking." Never-ending knocking, invasion, intrusion, constant struggle to focus, unknown horizon, future undetermined, unbounded anxiety, inescapable like a maze without an exit, unseen like air, yet ever present, knocking in vain for an answer that will never come. Each knock leaves an imprint, like bruises from fists, like feet in sand, like hands in clay.
Beautiful.
Let's see. Um, and the next poem, the title is TBM, and that's an acronym for Two Black Men.
Mhm.
You are not a monster. You are a gem to be polished, treasured, admired, and most importantly, loved. They ruined your narrative, trampled on your name with mud, labeled you as a thug, imprisoned you, institutionalized, defeated, battered is how they want you, incapable of providing for yourself or your family, locked away and scolded for being gone. Bring your children to jail, prison, and the cemetery to fuel the pipeline and feed the cycle.
Nice. And what inspired you for this two poetry you read? Or after, once you're done, you tell us for each poetry, what was your inspiration?
Okay. For the knocking, it was just like a sense of, um, I don't know, feeling like there's something tugging at me, but I don't know exactly what it is. So feeling like I still have to do work that I haven't achieved everything, but not knowing exactly what's holding me back. So that's what inspired me to write The Knocking, which is the first poem that I read. And then for the second poem that I read, I think it's very profound and very relevant to what we're experiencing today in the narrative of black men in our country. Seeing Black men being murdered, when you go on to social media, when you watch the news, um, how Black men are mistreated, how they're, jailed and kept away from their families, and just um, the terrible way that they're shown to people, or their stereotypes about them. So I really wanted to write that poem just to show that Black men are beautiful, that Black men should be celebrated and not feared, and that it's important that we speak those words and we speak life into them. So that's what inspired me to write the TBM poem.
And is there a third one you wanted to read before I interrupt you?
Oh no, you can go ahead.
Okay, so we talked about who inspired you, and what about the lyricist? Is there something that inspired you, like Leonard Cohen, or maybe Julio Iglesias, or any poet that or singer who inspired you to become a lyricist?
Well, actually I read the book of Tupac's. He has a book of his poetry, of course, and I'm sure he turned into songs. So that really motivated me. And I also read part of Alicia Keys' book of poetry. So that was also very inspiring to me. And of course, Maya Angelou. Her words are always so prophetic and powerful. So even though they're not songs, you can find a lot of music in poetry. So those are the people that I look up to, and I really like Neo, who's a very powerful
Yeah,
songwriter.
I love Neo.
Yes, so I really like him a lot, admire that talent, and I just decided that that's something that I wanted to do as well.
That's beautiful. And why? What is this interest of poetry? Was it from high school, or what made you choose it?
Yeah, so I actually started writing poetry in middle school. There was a poetry contest that I entered, and I was recognized with an honorable mention. So when I was able to be recognized, that made me feel good and made me feel like I was on the right track. It was something that came easy to me, something I enjoyed. So since middle school, I have been writing. And then also in high school, my senior year, her name is Mrs. Skelly. She passed recently, so may she rest in peace. But she was the English teacher, and we were assigned to read a lot of different poets and then write poems that mirrored what they had written. So I learned a lot about the different styles of poetry, haiku, free poetry, all the different, types of poetry that exist. So after learning about that, that continued to spark my interest in writing my own poetry. And then, of course, in March, I published my first book of poetry. And for me, poetry is an opportunity for me to express my feelings and to deal with some of the worldly issues that we have and some internal issues, and also celebrate, the great things that I've experienced, things that are happening in the world. So it's really therapy for me, and a form of self-care for me.
And what is your message across your poetry?
That everyone deserves to pursue their dreams and goals, and that everyone should be encouraged to do that. But I recognize not everyone has a support system, not everyone has someone to encourage them. So I focus on providing that to other people. So when I meet people and they tell me their goals, I always, tell them that they can achieve their goals. Try to give them resources, words of encouragement, and just be positive and make them feel like they can do whatever they put their mind to.
Yeah, I like that idea of empowerment. And what is your interest in poetry? Because I'm sure you learn different options in writing, and you are editing yourself. So why did
Yeah.
you go for poetry right now, not like when you were a kid?
Oh, I think just comes with experience. I'm older now. I've been through some different things, lived through different relationships, had different friendships, lived, in different parts of the country. So I think I just have more in my repertoire, so to speak, to write poetry about, versus when I was in middle school. I'm at 11 years old. There's only so much I can write about. So now that I am older, I have more that I can share and more that I need to process, and need to get out and write.
Awesome. Why did you feel like your poetry should be published? Because so many people had so many poems somewhere, like Emily Dickinson. She never been published when she was alive, and she was just keeping writing and trying to get better. So, what made you feel like it's the time to have your poetry out?
I think for me it was more personal. So just being more open about things that I've gone through, like um, some of the different things I experienced as a child. One of the poems I talk about is privilege, and recognizing how privileged that I am. That a lot of people didn't have the opportunities that I was afforded. Also. I mean, I talk about different things here. Even like I said, I do have a poem in there about being a dark skinned woman and a dark skinned girl. So that poem is meant to encourage. So again, overall, it was for me to release the emotions and feelings, but to also encourage other people to share if they want, but also recognize that they're not alone in their feelings, that a lot of us have the same experiences. One of the other poems I wrote about is Balancing is for Flamingos, and it talks about, all of the stresses and expectations and responsibilities that women have and that they're unrealistic. So again, that poem is just for camaraderie and again to recognize that, we all have common ground, that we all deal with, similar issues and concerns and we celebrate a lot of the same things. So I really wanted to put the poetry out for myself, but also to connect people, inspire people, and just give someone an opportunity to, possibly see themselves in the poetry that I write.
Awesome. Do you want to read that poetry since it's relevant to what we just discussed?
So let's see. Um, let's the order. It's towards the back. So I'll read Balancing is for Flamingos.
Mhm.
So this one I wrote after I attended a conference in Atlanta. One of the speakers, I think is Deneen Brown, if I'm not mistaken, had made the comment balancing is for flamingos, and she was referring to being a mother and an entrepreneur, a freelancer, and all the other responsibilities she had. So that is what influenced me to write this poem, Balancing is for Flamingos. I am not Superwoman, and neither is she. I cannot do it all. I cannot have it all. I cannot balance everything. Balancing is for flamingos. I am not a seesaw, so there is no equilibrium. I am not a professional juggler. The balls I carry are dropped often. What is work life balance? Apparently, a figment of our imagination, an impossible standard no one can achieve. Balancing is for flamingos. Women are multidimensional, multi-layered, and multifaceted people. But that's just it. We are human. We are not superheroes with capes, perfect without flaws, or capable of doing it all. Balancing is for flamingos. We need help. We need support and love. Women need other people. We cannot do it alone. Why should we? We are part of an interdependent system with various moving parts. We need you too. Our being and soul requires replenishment, satisfaction, and recharging. Why? Because balancing is for flamingos.
Nice.
Um, let's see. Where is that one? So the next one I'll read is called Mocha Chocolate Girls.
Mhm.
And this is the one about the experience of dark skinned girls and women across the globe. Of course, I live here in the United States, but colorism is an issue worldwide.
Oh,
So, Mocha Chocolate Girls touches on that a little bit. All around the world, they deny your beauty. All around the world, they ignore your presence. They look in the mirror and see you, but hate you so much. They call you black. They say you're too dark. Your rich hue is ridiculed. You're teased, harassed, or belittled. You might feel ashamed or inferior or unhappy. You might self loathe, cry, or hide. But despite their words and ignorance, you persevere. You are not alone. You are not shameful or inferior. You are not unhappy. You are all around the world. You are a force to be reckoned with. You do exist. You are beautiful. You are dark. You are lovely. Mocha Chocolate Girls.
mm. That's beautiful.
Yes. So, yeah. So, again, those are, two poems that hit home for me, of course, being, a dark skinned woman, and hearing about experience from other dark skinned women and being a girl in school who was teased about her complexion. I did want to write a poem to celebrate us as we aren't always celebrated, and just acknowledge that colorism does exist, that it is painful, but that we can overcome that we can unlearn that behavior, and that, we all deserve to feel that we're beautiful. And then for the balancing is for flamingos. So I don't have a family, but I have multiple businesses and different, ventures with a podcast and planning events and being on different boards. So
Mhm.
sometimes I do get overwhelmed, like I'm sure a lot of women. So balancing is for me for flamingos as a poem to just encourage us to take some time to ourselves, to say no when we need to, and take care of ourselves, and practice self-care and stay healthy, because if we don't take care of ourselves, then we can't take care of other people.
And talking about balancing your life, how do you cope with COVID-19 right now, with quarantine
Just
situation?
well, I've just been like watching videos on YouTube, things, continuing to learn that way, looking at different topics on YouTube. Like, for example, how to grow my podcast. I started that in March. Or I'll go on and watch slam poetry. I was watching an interview with Phyllis Hyman yesterday. I watched a mini bio of Samuel L. Jackson. So, taking a look at some of the people that I admire, taking a look at our ancestors and all the things that they sacrificed for us. I'm acknowledging, those sacrifices and being appreciative, learning about my history, Black history in our country. Those are some of the things I've been doing. I'm actually, of course, editing. I've had a few editing projects. So,
Mhm.
no, working on no, working on manuscripts, um, editing different projects for clients, and also being online on social media, promoting my business, and answering questions that new authors have, connecting with other women who are in business. I'm
Mhm.
doing, podcasts and interviews like this. I'm actually a part of the Inspire Women Virtuals Conference that's coming up in a few days. So just taking advantage of virtual opportunities as well, to stay busy, but taking downtime when I need to.
And is there a routine that could help you on a daily basis to stay sane and not overwhelmed with all the bad news? Because when you listen to the numbers of Black people dying right now with COVID-19, it's insane. How do you
Yeah.
cope with it and stay sane?
Yeah. I actually go out for walks, so that helps a lot. Listening to music helps. And then, like I said, sometimes I watch movies or documentaries, things like that. Talking to friends and family. I did a couple of Zoom dates with some friends, so that was different, a lot of fun. And just having opportunity to talk about it, um, freely with people that I connect with, people that I care about. So, the walking and then talking to people, listening to music, doing reading and things like that. Sleeping as well. That definitely helps rejuvenate me.
Awesome. And what kind of poetry are you doing? Because you have different types of poetry, and why?
So I mean, all of my poetry that I write is like free poetry, so it doesn't necessarily rhyme or anything like that. But I mean, the biggest difference in the poetry is just the topics, like I said, talking about, things that I've witnessed or observed in my life. Growing up in a household with domestic violence, that's in there, not directly, but I touch on, some of the feelings that came out of that. Also talking about, being focused, working, but trying to find a balance to make sure that I do take care of myself. So it's just free writing poetry, but the topics definitely vary. That's the biggest difference in the poetry that I
So,
write.
how many topics do you tackle in your book?
Racism, a little bit about depression. What else? Balancing. It's probably at least five or six different topics. I would say. There's some of them are reappearing throughout the book. So just talking about, overcoming issues or, heartbreak, I talk about that as well.
Mhm.
Some relationships that come to an end, that needed to end, how I dealt with that. I have a couple of poems in here about, Black people in America. I have a poem about being, fatherless, which so many people experience. Of course, poems about love.
Mhm.
Some of the poems are actually poems that I wrote in, high school, my senior year. So, I have a poem about someone who passes away and missing them. I have a poem actually about some students that I taught when I was in AmeriCorps. I was a art teacher, so I have a poem dedicated to them. So those are some of the topics I talk about in there.
And what's the foundation of your art?
Self-expression and freedom, I would say. Again, it's easier for me to write than it is for me to tell someone what I'm feeling.
Mhm.
So again, it serves as an outlet for me to be able to, get this out of me and put my feelings on paper so that I can see them and work through them, overcome them, if I need to, but also celebrate when I do have an achievement or I'm feeling good. Also acknowledging that, the positive in life and all the positive things that I've done, that I'm working toward, and, it feels good to be celebrated and also, share those experiences with other people as well.
And what characteristic of you could we find in your poetry?
Um, I would say authenticity. Like I said, there's a lot of truth in what I've written. All the poems are, have an element of myself. So, just talking about who I am as a person, some of the things that I've been through. Um, so yeah, I would say authenticity, just being true to who I am and not trying to write from a different perspective.
And what are you teaching? What do you want the audience to take away from your work?
I want them to take away that they are capable of achieving whatever they set their eyes on, that they have the power, that, they have the confidence to do it, that they have the capability, that they have the support to do it,
Mhm.
that, um, nothing can stand in their way, and they shouldn't let anything stop them from achieving their dreams and goals.
Yes. And is there any story behind the book?
Um, I mean, some of it, like I said, I pulled from, my high school time. So I had to go through the different, notebooks from high school when I was a senior
Mhm.
to choose some of those poems. Some of them I wrote on a plane. I think I was going to Atlanta. So a lot of the times when I write my poetry, it's just sporadic. So I wrote like four or five poems while I was sitting on the plane. So I mean, there's really no, backstory to it. I don't just sit down and write a bunch of poems. I have to be in the mood, so to speak,
Mhm.
where I know some people can, sit down for hours and pump out a whole bunch of content. I can only write when I have when I'm moved to write. So a lot of it was, limited. So I mean, I wrote those poems on a plane and then I didn't write another poem for a couple of months.
Okay.
So again, I write when I feel compelled to do
So do you
so.
think
Not
traveling
necessarily.
help you, or traveling and
Yes,
writing
definitely.
poetry? Does it go together?
Yeah, so I love traveling. So I'm kind of struggling with that now with COVID, but I definitely, feel like it has opened up my eyes and introduced me to different ways of life and cultures and perspectives. So I definitely feel like that goes hand in hand, and I think that is reflected in my poetry, with the different topics that I talk about. So traveling within our country and outside of our country, I can see similarities and differences and how we live and incorporate that into how I live my life.
And how does it
And
impact your work?
so, I mean, it just, opens my eyes to different experiences, makes me feel more comfortable trying new things, and also sharing, the things that I've experienced or the things that I've learned. So I think it makes me a more open person, um, more acceptable, and also welcoming of different cultures, different people, just the differences that exist in our world.
Okay. And as a lyricist, what is your struggle?
Um, I guess I would say vulnerability. Sometimes it can be uncomfortable to talk about, personal experiences, especially for me. That is a struggle. That's not always easy for me to do. So I think that would be the biggest challenge is just vulnerability and, telling people what I've gone through or how I'm feeling.
Why would you say it's vulnerability? What makes you think that's the most struggle you have? Why?
Um, I just feel like sometimes I have a guard, so it's more difficult to let the guard
Lower.
down.
Okay.
But
But anyway,
yeah,
you are still doing it. So is it a therapy
yeah,
for you, or why are you doing something that makes you feel vulnerable? Unless you like the
yeah,
feeling.
yes. Just to improve myself as a person. That's part of life. So it's going to be important for me to be able to share my feelings with people, so they know how I'm feeling, so they can help me if they're able and willing, or if I ask them for help, at least they know what I'm feeling, or just to have, just to be a listening ear, so that I can, work through any stress that I'm feeling or anger or sadness. If I talk about it, it's easier to overcome it than bottling in, my feelings.
Awesome. And what is your recommendation for a new beginner, a poet beginner?
I would just say, just write what's true to you. Make sure that you're not trying to sound like other people. And there's nothing wrong with, finding writers that you admire. And if there are certain traits that you want to build, of course, you study those traits and, have some type of, you can show some influence, but you shouldn't be trying to copy word for word or the exact style of other writers. So just make sure that what you're sharing is authentic to yourself, and write your own poetry, write your own story. We all have a story, and your story is going to resonate with, different people. So it's better for you to be original than to try to copy someone else. You will always fail at trying to be somebody else. So you might as well just be yourself. So that's what I would recommend. Just being honest with your poetry and writing when you feel like it. If you have writer's block, you can step away and come back later. You don't have to force yourself to write. So have patience with yourself as well.
Since you started from middle school till now, it took you a long time to produce your first book. Is there something you would have told yourself, like your old self from middle school, that would have helped you publish your book earlier? What would it be?
Mm, I would say write more often. Like I said, I don't write every day. I write, in spurts. So I think if I had been writing more frequently, I would have been able to produce, poems. I would have been able to produce more poems and publish sooner, versus now. But I think that was the biggest thing, just putting the time into it and sitting down and producing the content and poetry.
Okay. And what do you think about Christmas 2020 or the holiday seasons 2020?
Hmm. I think people will be, I don't know, I think they'll be more cognizant of space between each other. Um, but I feel like people will be excited to come together. But I still feel like people will be reflecting on this entire year at that time and the opportunities that were missed. I know even like now with, seniors whose graduations are canceled, hopefully by, December, we will be able to have our, regular Christmas gatherings of our families. But when we're, if we are able to have it at that time, I feel like
Mhm.
there will be a lot of reflection on birthdays and other celebrations we miss, but also gratitude that we're able to come together again as families, and also just share our experiences of what we went through for the whole year, and not just rely on virtual conversation or standing outside of a window and waving. I know our world has changed forever with this experience, but I'm hoping, at Christmas time we can, have that back where we can talk about what we went through.
And how would you celebrate Christmas? Let's consider COVID doesn't exist. How would be your Christmas? How would you prepare it? How would you celebrate
I
it?
usually, oh yeah, I usually spend Christmas with my family. We have a Christmas dinner, pass out gifts, and watch, TV programming and things like that. That's usually what I do. So that's
And
what
what
I
do you
would do
have
again.
traditionally for food?
Oh, usually we have like ham or roast beef, rice, yams, cornbread. Um, yeah, that's what we usually have. Sometimes we cater as well, so it varies from year to year.
So no turkey?
No, we usually have turkey for Thanksgiving.
Okay, so you save the turkey on
Yeah.
Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, so I would like you now, if you're okay, to give us a little poetry, not from your book, just from our
Oh.
experience from this show.
Oh, okay. um, I don't know. Mm. um, Virtual connection, positive conversation, um, authentic conversation, two minds collide, we've made history.
Mm. Thank you so much. And now is the song time now.
Okay.
Set up your
Yeah.
lyrics whenever you're ready.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like I said, I do write songs, but none of my songs have music to them yet. So
And
they're
what kind of
literally.
music would it be? Like, what do you think? Let's say somebody is a singer watching us right now, even on a replay. What would be the message you would like to send about the lyricist? And then we're going to talk about your editing business.
Okay. So the poem that I have, well, this song is called Trapped. So if if it did have music to it, or if it were to be sung, this would be R&B. It's, well, I can read a little bit of it. So the
Oh, you're going to
chorus
sing us
is,
a little bit of it.
I'm sorry.
You're going to sing it for us.
Well, I mean, there's no music to it. Like
Oh,
they're just lyrics.
yeah, but you could just make it like nice a cappella.
Okay.
You
Okay.
can do it.
Yes. Let's see. Okay. It's time to break free, time to let go of fear, time to explore, Time to move on, time to get out, time to go, time to fly free. It's a trap, but there is a way out. It's not really singing, but that's one of the
Lyrics?
that is one of the yeah, that's one of the that's not the chorus, but that is one of the verses there that I wrote.
Mm-hmm.
But this poem is about a relationship that the young woman needs to be removed from. She feels like she can't be herself. She feels that she can't succeed, that she's being held back. So that's what this song is about, and the title is Trapped. So,
I like it.
yeah. So that's just a little bit of that.
And another one?
That was it. I'm sorry.
Another one before we move to the editing business.
Let's see. Um, let's see. Let's see. So this poem is well, the song is called "Naturally Me." So I'm not gonna attempt to sing. I'm just gonna read one of the verses. So this one is: I am not my hair, but my hair is beautiful. I am beautiful. There is nothing wrong with my natural texture. After all, it's the way it should be. I refuse to let others discourage me. I will not be defeated. I will hold my head high. I will wear my natural hair. It's a part of me.
Mm. Well said.
So yeah, so that's another snippet of lyrics that I wrote.
Thank you. And let's talk about the editing business you have. So, who is your target audience?
My target audience is CEOs who are also authors that use their books to build their platform. So most of the clients that I work with do have their own businesses, which wasn't, I didn't do that intentionally, but I did take a look through my catalog of clients and I recognized that they all have that in common, excuse me. So with seeing that, I decided that that was my target market because that those are the people who are typically drawn to me to edit their books. So I usually work with CEOs. Um, they're either some of them are newer writers, some of them are experienced,
Mhm.
but like I said, all of them have been business owners like myself who use their books to tell their stories and build their platforms and also inspire other people. So that's my target market.
Okay. And what kind of book do you edit? Is there a
Yeah,
specific
so
genre or not?
well, I do fiction and nonfiction. So I've edited a book about someone who talks about infertility issues. There's also another author who talks about how to have a successful marriage. I've also edited a novel, which was like a love story. So I've edited different types between nonfiction and fiction. But at this point, it's been primarily nonfiction. I've also edited a comic book. I'm currently working on a manuscript that is about, experiences she's had from exes and lessons that she's learned from those relationships.
Mhm.
So I edit both nonfiction and fiction, but I tend to have more nonfiction manuscripts
But
come to
which one do
me.
you feel more comfortable with?
I feel more comfortable with nonfiction because it's just kind of factual information. I can check the figures. I can go on Google and double check information.
Mhm.
And it's more objective. But with things like poetry or, novels and stories, it's more subjective. So I have to find a balance between editing so that it sounds good but also maintaining the voice of the author. I'm making sure that I'm not changing it so that it sounds like me. I'm making sure that I'm giving recommendations and suggestions so the author can decide, okay, yes, I agree or I don't agree. And I think that's one of the things that authors are afraid of with working with an editor. Well, if I work with an editor, he or she is going to change my book entirely, or they're going to get rid of my voice.
Yeah, I had
So
that
they,
in one of my books. I had an editor, so we wrote it under her way, and
right,
unfortunately, it was not what I wanted. So it was an issue I had in the past. So I completely
right.
relate with that.
Yeah.
Mm.
So I try to make sure that I have that balance. And one of the things that I do is I actually offer a sample edit up front. So that way you can see my style of editing and you can let me know if it meets your expectations. So that way we don't waste time, we don't waste money. So I do that up front, and I learned that lesson early on
Okay.
because previously I didn't do any sample edits. I just I gave them the contract, they gave me the manuscript, and I started the job. And then I would get it to them when it was done, and then I would find out, okay, this is not what they wanted, or I'm confused about this, etc. So since I've started doing the sample edits up front, I've been able to eliminate that type of dissatisfaction and, of course, wasting time and money. So that's been really helpful for me.
That's awesome. And what do you mean
Yeah.
by sample? How much of your work do you give away as a sample?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
How much do you give away as a sample? Like, is it a chapter or
Oh, usually 3 to 5 pages, so not a whole lot, but enough for me to be able to get an understanding of how they write, what their challenges are, what their strengths are, what the book is about. So usually 3 to 5 pages, sometimes longer, depending on how long the book is or what the book is about.
okay? And let's say the page or 6 pages allows you to go back and forth with the author and make sure you have the same understanding out of the editing process.
Right. So yes, so they would send me the sample, I'll edit it, and then I schedule a follow-up call and we'll talk about what I saw, what my recommendations are, the edits that I made, and then I have opportunity to ask them, is this what you're looking for? Are you satisfied with these edits? And we have that conversation to make sure we're on the same page.
Okay. And when it comes to editing, you have two different editing. You have the copy editing and the other one, I don't remember. Which one do you do?
Yes. I do both. So the copy editing really focuses on like the spelling and grammar, punctuation, all the things that come to mind when you usually hear editor.
Mhm.
And then the developmental actually focuses on the content, the big picture,
Yeah.
making sure that, you don't have the same reveal twice in the book. I've come across that. So in chapter 5, you reveal that she's pregnant with a boy, and then you forgot you revealed it again in chapter 13. So making sure you don't have those repetition,
Yeah.
making sure, like, for example, if you spelled the character's name one way in the beginning of the chapter, that it's still spelled the same way throughout the chapter. Things like that, making sure that the plot makes sense, that the order of the events makes sense. So it really focuses on the actual content for the developmental edit.
That's interesting. So could you
Yes.
explain a little bit more about the full picture? Because sometimes it's not easy. And I know many authors don't get the point of investing in the editor, and they feel like it's a waste of money and they just want people to be, how they call it, beta readers. So why would
Mm.
you go for a real editor and not a reader? Could you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I would recommend that because you want to put your best foot forward when you write a book. You want to make sure that your audience understands what you're talking about.
Mhm.
And your editor is there to make sure that, your story makes sense or that your book or your manuscript makes sense.
Mhm.
They're also there to pick up on things that you may miss. So I am an editor, but when I wrote my first book, um, and in the future, I plan to use an editor. So even though that's my profession, I know that I'm too close to the work,
Mhm.
so what I think is on the page may not be there, but because I wrote it, it looks good to me. So it's important for you to step away from your work and have a professional or a second set of eyes look at it freshly, because they're not assuming that they already know what you're trying to say. So if you're writing it, you might miss that you didn't explain that clearly, or you might be using language that is not common. So you may have to define the word that's in there or find a synonym for your readers. You don't want them to struggle with following your story. So I think it's really important for you to hire an editor to catch any mistakes or things that you have overlooked, and also clarify. A lot of the editing process is just clarifying messages. So when I go through a manuscript, I will write next to it, I highlight it, and then I'll ask, what does this mean? This is confusing. Or if something seems like it's out of place, I'll just I'll put in the notes, I'm not sure how this is connected, or maybe this will fit better in the next chapter, things like that. So you definitely need a professional to help you pull it together. The last thing you want is to publish your book and everyone, they love the storyline, but they don't understand it, or you have a lot of grammatical issues or lots of punctuation or spelling issues that take away from the enjoyment. So that's what I would definitely recommend, hiring an editor. And I agree that it's not necessarily the cheapest part of the publishing, of the publishing process, but it's definitely important. So, I mean, like anything, you can find editors that, are higher end, or if you have a lower budget, you can find editors that maybe are in your range. So I would at least encourage you to look for editors and get sample edits, if nothing else, to make sure that your book is as polished as it can be.
And what would you tell to people who are thinking that beta readers are enough, good enough?
I mean, that's an interesting statement. I acknowledge that you do have a target market. So the people who you're targeting, you would assume would, be able to understand what you are writing, but it also leaves out a lot of potential clients. So if you're trying to, get your book to a large amount of people, either for inspiration or education, you don't want to cut them out because they don't meet a certain reading standard. And just because they're not reading at a certain level doesn't mean they can't benefit from what you're writing. So I think it is important to be considerate of that. But I mean, there's two sides to it. So I feel like it just leaves out a lot of people who might benefit if you had that mentality.
I agree with you, because it's really important to have your book edited. And even if you have it edited by professional, it's still good to have, on top of that, beta readers, the max you could have, not only for the beta readers, not only for the editing part. It's more like the fact that you have those beta readers, the professional editing, allows you to have more feedbacks, and also the beta readers still post for you some reviews. So it's always good to have all of them. I know it's not the less expensive part of the book production, but I think it's worth it, because you write a book one
Absolutely.
time. It's not like something you would do every month or every day. And
Right.
once you have it published, it's one lifetime, and the book is a
Mhm.
product, and the product is there for a lifetime, and even beyond your lifetime, because it's still there.
Right, right. And then just to piggyback on the beta readers, for those who may not know what those are, the beta readers are people who are in your target market, who will read your book for you and give you feedback on it. So I definitely recommend that as well. That's another way to get feedback and make sure you're on the right track. So I encourage my clients to do that as well. So if you're writing a book for children, maybe reach out to some schools and see if they'll have some of their students read it and then give you feedback on it. Or if you are writing for married men, maybe reach out to some married men that or find some online and get their feedback. So that's another part of the publishing process that I recommend everyone participate in.
And in your business, are you expensive or are you affordable?
I would say I'm affordable. My prices vary. Of course, with COVID-19, I have been more flexible with pricing.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I would say I'm more affordable. Well, particularly at this time, I would say, because I have decreased my prices.
But that's just
Pre-COVID,
for a season. That's a seasonal decrease prices. But let's say a book
right,
goes back to normal. What would be your price? Because sometimes you have people watching right now, so they know about
right,
right now. There is an option to have a sample done, and then they could
right,
feel you and see if you could collaborate or not. But what if
right.
somebody's watching the replay like a few months after than when it was recorded? And what would be your price? So if you could tell us from now on, let's call it a promotion price, and what would be the normal price, so they know exactly what to expect depending on the time of
Right.
we play.
Right. So the promotional price is $2.50 per page, $2.50 per page.
Mm-hmm.
Regular price is $3.50 per page.
Yeah, but that's if it's a
So
big book. And what about if it's a children book?
I mean, it varies. With children's books, I usually charge 4 cents per word.
Okay.
So I usually charge per page, but sometimes it varies. If it's a shorter book, then I might charge per word.
Okay.
So that would be 4 cents per word.
Okay. And let's say a smoothie book.
A what book? I'm sorry.
A smoothie book. No, because I'm working on a short book right now, and it's about the
Oh,
smoothie.
okay.
That's why I'm asking.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So 4 cents per word.
Okay, so good to know.
Yeah.
So we recommend the beta reader. Thank you for clarifying what's a beta reader, because I'm assuming everybody knows what's the beta reader.
Right.
Because what I do usually, I have my book, a launch,
Mhm.
I have my editor. After my editing, I have the process of beta readers. I give them a few days,
Mhm.
and they have the time, usually max 2 weeks, to have the time to go through it. And then I
Okay.
have members of my launch team that are getting the book before the launch. So they are part of my launch team from the beginning
Mhm.
of the process. So they know, and I give them feedback every day about what I'm doing, or every 2 days. And then they know it's going to come out, and they could share it on their social media. And they are the first one to receive the book itself. And
Mhm.
also, once they read it, after the beta readers, they have the time also to read it and give me feedback if something is missing, because we are all human. And it happens sometimes,
Right.
you just forget something, a comma or something that shouldn't be there. Or maybe the way you
Mhm.
say it doesn't match. And then they get back to me. And once we all right, we set the launch already, but we know if it's going to be delayed, could change it, because it's between us on the group. I have a special Facebook group based on the title of the book. And then we work from there, and the D-Day, they have to share and spread the word, since they already had the time to read it,
Mhm.
eventually have the review ready. So that makes the first day is really a big launch day.
Mhm. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's how I do it. So I'm going to let you know
Yeah.
about, because I'm working on my smoothie book, and I'm trying to get
Okay.
many people talking about their own smoothie experience. And we have a smoothie live show every day at 12 p.m. Eastern time, and where we met and we have our own smoothie like we had it earlier today. This was my cup.
Mhm.
So we talk about our smoothies, and I would like to have something that's kind of like more like a lead magnet. I don't know if I'm going to be able to have it free on Amazon, but I'll do my best. I'll let you know when I'm ready for the editing part, because I'm not sure. My usual editor, she's not into cooking books, and she told me she's
Okay.
not into it. And I know some editors would be like, no, that's not my genre, or I don't want to do
Okay.
this, and stuff like that. So that's why
Mhm.
I'm asking to know what can you do, and
Oh, okay.
make sure you are not receiving someone you want to have in your
Right.
editing business. And if
Mhm.
it's something we could do, we could collaborate on that one. So I'll let you know. And
Okay.
thank you so
That's
much for
good.
today. And I'll let you, if you want to
Yeah.
read maybe one or two more poems before we wrap.
Okay. Okay.
And guys, if you have any question, just comment, and we get back to you. And also at the end of this show, if you don't mind adding your link, I mean your business link, because this interview was about your lyrics, about your
Okay.
poetry, about your book. So we need your book link onto it. And also the
Okay.
Facebook event of this one would last forever on Facebook. You have to add all those links there. And under this show, if you could add it below, so whoever is watching right now could go back, even on a replay, feel free to comment anytime. You could just come back and do the show if you have some comments, maybe, or maybe authors willing to work with you. Because like I told you, you are the first editor we had on this show. So you have to go back sometimes and just check who commented below. And also, it's not only live on one page. I forget to tell you guys. It's also live on different other pages. So I'm going to add also the other links so you could go back there and check if somebody's commenting or anything. Because I have a Facebook under my name, and it's about the bestseller giveaway. So all those authors are in the Facebook group and the Facebook page under the same name. I'm going to post also the link so you have it. And you could go there also and see whatever they have to tell or comment. So you could get back to them too and post your link in there. If you're ready, I'm just waiting for you.
Yes. So this poem is Dear Katira, and it's kind of like a letter to myself.
Oh.
You are not. Yes.
Wait.
You
when
are
are you
not
supposed to read it to yourself? Is it like a letter for you in the future, or is it a letter to yourself right now? Give us all the secrets.
So I wrote this based on when I was younger, so probably like middle school, to myself as a young girl. And I just wanted to put that down on paper and remember how I felt, when I was younger, some of the things that I went through and experienced. So I decided to write a poem to my younger self.
Okay.
So it's called Dear Katira. You are not alone. There are other girls like you. Girls who fear for their mother's life, girls who are called ugly, girls who are misunderstood, girls who are quiet and to themselves, young women who are ambitious, creative, and wonderfully made, flawed and fabulous, adventurous and fearless. Dear Katira, you will be fine. Just keep living, honey. You are destined for greatness.
Nice. And how old were you when you wrote it? Was it 11 years old?
So I wrote this as an adult to my 11-year-old self.
Okay, so your mini you. Nice.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you so much.
And yeah, thank you. Do I have time to read another poem, or do we need to? Okay. I'm actually going to read. I'm sorry.
4 more minutes to go.
Okay. I'm actually going to read one of my favorite poems. It's by
And what is your favorite poem?
Because it talks about celebrating yourself without feeling like you are celebrating yourself without feeling like you have to hide yourself, or that people are judging you, or that you can't shine because that'll take away from other people's light. So the name of it is Our Deepest Fears by Marianne Williamson. So I'll go ahead and get started. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? Actually, who are we not? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We are born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And when we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like it.
So yeah, I really appreciate that.
And the one you just made up during this show, the special one for this show. The poetry you had today, the one you made just today.
You want me to repeat it?
That's the one I love the most.
Oh, okay. I can't remember it.
Oh, it's live. You could watch it later.
Yeah, I'll watch it later.
It was really great and nice. And I remember it was a virtual meeting and colliding minds.
Yes.
For the great,
Powerful
I
conversation.
don't remember, but we could watch it again and get it there. But
I
it was
will.
really nice, and it was just the momentum, and I enjoyed it a lot. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for being
Thank you.
here. Thank you for joining me. And whoever is watching this, if you need an editor, don't hesitate. Contact Katawa. She's going to post below her links, your book links, and also your business links, so it's easy to find you. And if you can't see it, just contact me. I'll give it to you. Thank you so much, Katawa. And
thank you.
Thank you for being game, and thank you for watching. And share if you know somebody who might need an editor, a poetry, or somebody who may resonate with what we had to do on this show. Thank you so much, Katawa, and thank you everybody for watching. It was Ndeye interviewing Katawa. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.